Welcome back. We're on block 4, Toucan of the Wonderful Birds block a month. I am going to start decorative stitching this beautiful little bird. One of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to use a feather stitch all the way around the black part of the bird. Using the beautiful, not quite black, but blackish variegated in the kit. I love it. It's one of my favorite spools of pearl cotton that we have in our basic kit. We'll start just under the white part of the neck here. I'm going to leave a long tail to get started because I'll use that to pull to the back. Just going to give myself just a wee bit extra here. And interestingly enough, in the set of instructions that came with my blog, they don't actually mention the stitch around the bird. So I've used other feather stitches in other birds so far, but I'm going to use a different one here just to mix it up a bit. In my Luminaire, it's menu number 2 feather stitch, so 2-12, and the important thing here, something hopefully that will help you keep going, there's some markings on the back of my foot here. And I am going to use the center mark on the edge of the bird. That's to help me keep that stitch centered over the raw edge here. So let's maybe loosen the tension a little bit. The width on this particular design is a 5. I think that's okay. I think the toucan needs a flashy little bit of feathering. Yeah, so although this doesn't have a straight line in the middle, just gonna keep stitching rather slowly. Keep the design centered, that edge hitting that mark on the foot. And any of these stitches that work from side to side, the best time to pivot is once you get back to the middle. So here we go. Now would be a great time. Okay, so there we got that stitch going around. I'm going to show you something, just a sneaky little trick here. Back at the beginning, I'm picking a straight stitch. I'm going to increase the length to about a 3, and I'm working from straight stitch. I'm just going to sneak around this log, kind of stitching in the ditch. And when I do the decorative edge around the log, I'll make sure that I use a stitch that's dense enough to cover those raw edges and hide my sneaky travel stitch here. I find that a stitch like that is a little better than tying it off. And I got lucky. I got a very dark navy spot there, which in the variegated thread, which is going to kind of nicely hide, and then I'm going to flip back to the stitch I was using. So the design itself doesn't go across the bottom of the tail here. There's 2 little bars of extra feather stitch here. And now something to note, the feather stitch here is pointed down in arc. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue with this sneak. I'm going to pop back into the straight stitch And I'm going to just wander over here about where that stitch will be. There'll be a row here and a row here. But to make sure that they're both pointing down, I'm going to straight stitch up here. Then I'm going to flip, and I've got quite a bright light color here so you can see where I'm heading. But to keep the V's pointing down like they are on the side here, I straight stitched up over here. This eliminates back stitching. And now I'm just going to okay, so as you can see, the V's were pointed down, and then we snuck around that log in that straight stitch. Then I kept the V's going down here. We snuck across here with a straight stitch, up the tail, and with a straight stitch, and then feather stitched over it again here, and then I straight stitched to the end of the tail here, and I've cut that off. Left a long tail so I could pull that to the back. Now I'm going to come this way around the bird, and that little straight stitch down here will help anchor this, and it keeps this flow across the bottom of the tail. And up top here, I'm just going to start with a longer tail. Start right at the top of the head here, right up against the beak. So I'm going to come around the back of the bird now, across the top of his head, and I've got the V's will be pointing down. But around here, I'm going to increase the width to a 7, get a little more going on here. And I've lowered the tension just a little bit to help. Now remember, keeping the edge of the applique centered on the mark in my foot. So I pulled a long tail there to tie off in the back. I just went back over that. That anchors those from coming out. And then just a little bigger, a little more fun going around the back. Shows off a little more. And then a little bit slightly smaller on the belly. Very cool. All right, so here we are, Toucan. And in my earlier stitch, I had said this stitch, the feather stitch, wasn't there. In step 2 in my instructions, they were talking about this as an open fly stitch. It's certainly not the description I would use, but it is sort of there. So here around the toucan face, it's showing sort of just around the curve here, a bullion stitch, which at quick glance is a bit of a scallop. I'm going to use a little bit of that water-soluble topping here just to help keep the stitches on top. And I'm going to give myself a good long tail to start. And just come around the face here. So what I have is in the character decorative stitch menu on the luminaire that I'm using, I'm in menu 13 and I've selected the small scallop 1301, and I have narrowed it to a width of 5 and a length of 11.3, and I've selected a single repeat, so that the important thing to making a scallop look nice is that you don't turn direction while it's forming. So putting single repeat on helps. Okay, so my thread broke at the beginning of the next scallop here. So what I did was I went in and cleared the scallop so that I'm going to start at the beginning, so I don't miss any stitches. And I'm finding that an extra layer of stabilizer is making the scallops just a little clearer. So I've cleared the half-finished scallop, selected a whole new one, doubled over my stabilizer, and I'm going to start right at the end of that scallop again. And luck helped me there. Got a full scallop that ended right at the end of the face. Okay, so I'm not going to take the bird out just yet. I'm going to put on a triple stitch, give myself a length of 3.5. I'm just going to move it till it's in the center of the foot there. And then I'm just going to put a nice strong finish right along here. So you can see those scallops from earlier. I feel like I could squeeze one more in there, which could do when I get to the bottom here. So I think that I'm going to just add another piece of stabilizer. I'm going to put the needle down. I'm just going to bump the stabilizer right up against there. I can still see the face. I'm going to just add a wee zigzag there, just to catch that a little bit on the edge. So this is just standard zigzag at a width of 2.0 and a length of 1.4. Oh. All right, given that my thread broke, give myself another long tail here. I'm going to go back and take the opportunity to start at the top here, because I think I am going to go sneak one more scallop in at his chin there. And I'm going to start at the top here, and I'm going to use that wee little zigzag just to catch the edge of the wool down. I'm going to tear away some of the stabilizer here so you can perhaps better see the stitch they jacked up. Because that bullion stitch in the cream mostly lands on the black, it's quite distinct, easy to see, it's quite pretty. And then there we go. Let's clean up the rest of that stabilizer. White Q-tip will erase anything that's stuck in the design. And we'll just pull these tails to the back. And honestly, if there's anything that didn't turn out or you didn't like, going in and adjusting, put a couple hand stitches in, something like that, legit. But I'm pleased. There's a nice frame around the front of the face, caught the edge of the face with that little zigzag, which just gives it a little more oomph. In the instructions, it has a stem stitch, something just a little heavier there. In the picture that I have, there's feather stitch here in the picture of the hand stitching diagram, but the actual front cover of my kit only has it starting down here, which to me feels better, is the fun variegated down on the dark spot and all the light variegated on the face. All right, so we will move on. All right, let's just talk about the next section. And we're going to be stitching on the beak here. And it suggests that we go around the beak first in the orange. Then we'll do a little bit of stitching along this join here in the pink. And then do a little texture in here. And then go in and do the yellow stripes that are on the beak. I'm going to reverse that. I'm going to do the orange last because it goes around to everything. And I'll start with the yellow, I believe, first. It's just 3 stripes, a little heavy stitching here, right in the middle. We'll start with the yellow, then I'll come in with the pink, and then I'll follow up at the end with the orange, which is opposite to the instructions. But I like the orange is going to go all the way around to everything, and I think it should go last, just in case it needs to catch any of the ends of the other colors. I made a choice of just a different stitch to do the decorative piece on the beak. It does, the instructions for hand is 3 rows of a chain stitch. And I thought I would try something a little different. It'll feel similar, but won't be a chain stitch like any of the stitches I've used in the previous birds. What I'm going to try here is I'm going to just center on the orange part of the beak here. I'm starting to really like how the water-soluble stabilizer sometimes really helps accentuate the stitch and allows it to float on the wool instead of sink into the wool. So I'm just going to put a little bit of that here. Center everything again. And what I've actually picked is what I think of as sort of a hexy stitch, but it isn't. In the Luminaire, it's in menu 2, stitch 11, It's looks like a bunch of X's, and it looks like a honeycomb, I guess, when it's done a little bit. So I'm going to use that, but I've made it 7 mils wide, so it's almost the width of the foot. And I changed the length to a 2, which kind of squared it back up, and then loosened the tension just a bit. So let's see how that goes. Got one stitch is almost too much, so I'm just going to back that up and not let it complete. Pull out through the back. Let's have a little look. Oh, I like it. I like it. I'm going to leave myself a long tail in case I need to do any little hand stitch to complete the pattern. Yeah. So there we go. I like it. Let's see if I can give you a better close-up. There we go. I think it's awesome. Okay, so let me reset for the pink and we'll keep on going. Okay, we're set now with the pink thread to go on the pink part of the beak, even though the instructions refer to it as red. It's quite pink to me. So in the utility stitch menu on the luminaire, I'm going to do the back stitch that it says along here, probably just as a triple stitch. And then over in this area, there's a little bit of seed stitching, which are just little stitches up and down, kind of scattered about. But in menu 1, there's something called the quilting stippling stitch, and it's number 36, 1-36. I think I'm just going to put that in there. I think it might work out. Again, like I said earlier, I'm enjoying having the stabilizer to help keep the stitch afloat. I think I'm going to start with that kind of meander quilt stitch just here on the edge of the beak. Keep that stabilizer in. All right, so that's going to be fun. It's just kind of let's get a close-up, and it's just kind of a meandering all over texture stitch. I've stopped now that the needle has hit the end of the pink there. And what I'm going to do is slip over to that straight stitch. And then just sort of in the ditch on the pink there. I'm just going to sneak over to the join here between the pink and the orange. And calls for back stitch there. I don't know. I think maybe just the triple stitch will suit us. And I'm going to leave it in the left justification here. And I'm going to use the edge of the foot right there just to keep it just on the bitter edge of the pink. Right, there we go. And then I'm at the top of the beak there, and I'm going to just switch into that regular straight stitch again. And I am going to stitch over to this piece so I can tie them together actually in the back. I'm just sneaking around the edge of the pink. And then what that will do is allows me in that next step to put the orange all the way around the beak and catch those edges, but you can't see than where I've snuck around. It'll be hidden under the orange. Okay, so we are about to stitch around the beak. The instructions use a hand stem stitch, which is a fairly heavy little stitch. It overlaps twice, so I think that I'm going to actually just use the triple stitch. I'm going to lengthen it to 3.0. Center it, and around I go. So in this stitch, it starts where the beak meets the face. Give myself a nice long tail out the back. Stitch is going to go right in the white, so I'm just going to back the piece up a little bit, let the needle drop in there. I've threaded up with the all black Alana wool. The Toucan has some tone-on-tone action going on. There's a couple flowers on his back and then a line of stitching that sort of delineates the wing. So we'll get that stitched out today. And we're coming up to completion here. Then we still have some texture in the breast and the green leaf frills on the sides, and a little bit more to do on the log. So let's carry on. All right, here we go. I've got some reference marks. I'm going to do this wing area first. It's quite simple. We'll leave a little bit of a tail so we can pull that through to the back. And then I think I'm just going to simply do a basic triple stitch here. I'm going to lengthen it to 3.5 and loosen the tension a wee bit. Alrighty, for the first flower, I've selected out of the decorative stitch menu from menu number 7, flowers 7-07. I've increased the width to 9.4, the length to 12, and I'm going to lower the tension a bit. This is very similar to the bit we did in the robin previously. And then this is just roughly where I'd like it to go. And I know that it has a straight stitch as a lead in, so I want that a little ahead of the center mark there. Pretty close will be pretty good here. I'm going to repeat 707 with no increases in width or length, just a reduction in tension, making it a wee bit smaller than this one. I also selected single repeat so that I didn't have to worry that it would accidentally start stitching another one that I would have to unpick. Pretty subtle stuff here. Now just give me a second to rethread to the blue for the chest. Okay, so the tummy has a few random straight stitches through it. I'm going to go into the buttonhole menu. And I'm going to use 4-23, reducing the tension. 3.5 is the width. Now it's going to sew, of course, left to right. So I'm going to just turn this sideways a bit. And I'm going to use that buttonhole stitch. It's the automatic stitch for sewing on buttons. I'm just going to sew that out. And it has its own tie-offs. And when it's done, it ties off and stops. And then I'm just going to move randomly through the burst. Okay, so you could see that it was tying itself off here and there. So all I'm going to do is cut the front short. And I just cut off that initial tie on, and I shouldn't have. I'd like to pull those to the back. But it is what it is. So we now have these. I'm just going to cut the travel stitches off in the front, but I'm not going to cut the bobbin thread at the back. That will help hold it in place. There we go. So you can see we just have a few random little blue stitches throughout the body. And as I said previously, there are times when having hand stitching is your friend, because those are just quick over-unders, easily done by hand, even by the staunchest machine stitcher. So, but there we go. As promised, everything by machine. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on to a rethread and some marks for the bird. Got my variegated green loaded up. I've marked out the leaves and vines that I wanted in a wash away marker. And I think I'm just gonna blaze ahead there. The stops and the starts are sort of the most vulnerable places for your stitching to come undone. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start down at the bottom here. I'm going to roll my way up, and once I get to this breakaway point here, I'm going to straight stitch all the way up here, and then I'm going to come back to here and out to there. And that just, as long as my thread doesn't break, that gives me a continuous stitching, and it'll only have one stop and one start. So let's see how we do there. I think we're gonna triple stitch, 3, wait, 0 long, smooth that needle into the middle, Okay, we're gonna go into a bit of a satin stitch here. Just going to put a bit of water-soluble stabilizer where that is. And I'm in a straight stitch now, and I'm going to just carry on, tuck this down, straight stitch. And then that water-soluble stabilizer just gives us a little bit of extra support. And I'm going to start the zigzag with a width of about 2.0 and a length 0.5. Keep the stitch in the center and just reduce the tension a wee bit. And then 1 or 2 stitches from the point, and then I'm going to increase the width. A couple more stitches. Increase. Decrease. It's a bit of a pointy little leaf. Sort of back down to where we started. And I'm just going to have a look at it. I think I need just a wee bit more bulk there. So I'm going to go over it again. Starting with 2.0. Couple stitches. Jump to 3.0. 4.0. 5.0. Down to 4. 3. 2. Okay, so I'm kind of out here at the beginning. It's a little shorter, maybe a little narrower than the one done by hand. Just recenter here. And I think what I'm going to do, move in a little bit. And go up to the 5. Maybe a little bigger to 6.5. Tension's not holding nicely for me. So, sometimes you just need to know when to call it quits. I'm going to go back down to a 2.0 at the end here. Back into the triple stitch here. And work my way out to the main body of the stem. Another little wee leaf here. I have some multiple layers of water soluble here, and I put a little slit in there. And I'm just going to slide that around the needle. And I'm going to head back into my zigzag and try the same satin stitch. Just gonna do a plain zigzag here for a second to help start that padding. There we go. Alrighty, so here we are. Got our vines, some leaves. This is ready to go for the final step of the flower. The flower has something called a pistol stitch. We'll figure out something to do there. And then got to just finish up the little branch. So let me rethread and we'll be back in a minute. All right, so we're going to head into the details of our little wooden branch here. I've got that brown variegated in. Now it does stem stitch around the edge. I'm going to do a treble stitch of about 4.0 long with a slightly lighter tension. Kind of right on the bitter edge of the Now there's a back stitch through the middle of the little branch. Now I'm simply going to do a basic straight stitch there. I'm going to increase the length to about 4 and decrease the tension just a wee bit. Keep these tails out of each other's way. It starts almost but not quite at the end. And it will complete just before the end of the log. Give ourselves some tie off. And so a back stitch by hand essentially looks like a machine stitch. All right, everyone, we are about to start working on the flower. Touch the end of that vine. The hand stitch is called a pistol stitch, which is basically a straight line with a French knot at the end. Those would be super easy by hand, but I'm going to give a crack at it. The stitch is layered a bit. Now I've given myself a rough outline here in water soluble. The first color laid down is 1096, which is that darker variegated orange. The second color is the solid yellow. And the final color is the lightest yellow variegated there. The colors are listed, of course, in the instructions, but 1096, 17, and 1079 to give that sort of a variegated look. Now, the first stitches are underneath all the other stitches, and that will be in this color. So let me get set up and then we'll go. Something to note about that pistol stitch. It doesn't start here and end here. There's sort of 3 layers. So the longest stitch, they're all about the same length. They're layered in. So if they're a ½ inch long, the first ½ inch goes all the way to the end, the next ½ inch staggers in, and the last ½ inch goes in. And it also, that curve, there's a lot more stitches in the dark orange here, just to help keep it a little bit even. I'm going to start in the middle here, and I'm going to see if I can, just going to needle down, and then I'm going to go all the way out here, needle down. The length doesn't even matter here. I'm going to put it at a 0.2, because now what I want to do is just kind of stitch in spot for a second as an anchor. Then I have to figure out what might make a nice there's a French knot at the end. So I've picked in menu number 3 stitch number 6 and gave myself a single repeat there, and it's sort of a little star stitch. So I'm going to do that here at the end, and I'm using that last line as my reference to where I want to place that little star. That's a nice bit there. I think I'm going to needle up and needle down to about the same spot here. And that's going to be my first pistol. And I'm just going to move over a wee bit here. Needle down there. And then I'm going to needle up. I'm not going to needle down here. And then I'm just going to do that little star stitch. And there we go. needle down just in the middle of that. And this shifting will be hidden by the layers. All right, so I think I'm complete that first layer of pistol stitch. I'm just going to pull these tails to the back, thread up for the middle color, which of course was that bright yellow. Be right back. Okay, so we have our parameters outlined for the pistol stitch. I'm just going to darken this up down here a little bit so I can see it a little more. So the final color will end on that line there. The medium color will be somewhere between the two, and it will end somewhere about here. And I'm thinking that I'm going to drop the French knots between these ones here. So that would be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. Originating from a line just below this one. And this time, because I have a clearer idea of where I'm going to start on the side and work my way across. Last time I started in the middle just to help mark the middle, and I went to the sides. But I think this time I have a better idea of the outline. All right, that's starting to build nicely. Let me thread up for our third and final color. Back with that light variegated yellow, third layer of the pistol stitch. And what we're going to do is just kind of cover all that little bit in down here. Fill that in a little bit. And then the third and final row will finish right around in here. And there might be 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. Maybe 8 if I don't like that orange being all the way out there. And then these will all originate off of that bottom line there. So we can always go in and do a fill if we need to. Alrighty, well, I kind of love its little dandelion wild look, you know? I feel like I could use one more stitch here. Just on the edge of this. I like it. Alrighty, so that concludes the toucan.